The sharp crack of my father's palm across my cheek echoed through the suddenly silent dining room. My gold earring spun through the air, landing somewhere near Uncle Robert's feet as 30 shocked relatives stared at the ugly red mark blooming across my face. Diana stood beside him with her palm extended, waiting for my penthouse keys like she was entitled to them. Mom's cold smile revealed this humiliation had been planned all along. Without speaking, I pulled out my phone, scrolled to the contact marked emergency protocol, and pressed call. The countdown had begun. 3 months ago, I never imagined my own family would become my greatest threat. I had worked tirelessly to build my marketing consulting firm from absolutely nothing, surviving on instant noodles and determination during those first brutal years. 12-hour days became my normal routine as I pitched clients, crafted campaigns, and slowly built the reputation that would eventually afford me the downtown penthouse I now called home. Every square foot of that place represented my independence, my success, my proof that I could create something meaningful with my own hands. The penthouse purchase had been my declaration of freedom. 7 floors above the city, with floor 2 ceiling windows overlooking the harbor. It was everything I had dreamed of during those lean startup years. The marble countertops, the walk-in closet, the balcony where I sipped morning coffee while watching sunrise paint the water golden. It was mine, earned through countless presentations, strategic networking events, and the kind of grinding persistence that most people never experience. But my family saw my achievement differently. To them, my success was somehow unfair, undeserved, or worse, selfish. The first intervention happened during what I thought was a regular Sunday dinner at my parents' house in suburban Meadowbrook. Gerald, my father, had always been authoritarian, treating his daughters like children regardless of our ages. At 55, his voice still carried that commanding tone from his military days, expecting immediate compliance with his pronouncements. Martha, my mother, preferred the subtle knife to the sledgehammer. Her passive, aggressive comments could slice through confidence like paper, always delivered with a sweet smile that made questioning her seem unreasonable. She had perfected the art of making her manipulations appear caring, wrapping guilt in maternal concern until victims thanked her for the privilege. Diana, my younger sister, had mastered the art of professional victimhood. At 28, she had never held a job for longer than 6 months, always finding someone else to blame for her failures. Co-workers were jealous, bosses were unfair, and circumstances were impossible. She possessed an almost supernatural ability to summon tears on command, transforming any confrontation into a scene where she became the injured party needing protection. That first Sunday dinner ambush caught me completely off guard. I had arrived expecting pot roast and family gossip, instead finding myself surrounded by 3 people who had clearly rehearsed their attack. Diana began with the waterworks, explaining how desperate her situation had become after losing yet another retail job. Her cramped studio apartment in the university district was uninhabitable, her bills were overwhelming, and her mental health was suffering terribly from the stress. Dad jumped in with his military authority, declaring that family members support each other during difficult times. He spoke about sacrifices he had made raising us, about values we should have learned, about disappointing behavior from a daughter he had given everything to. The subtext was clear. Refusing Diana's needs would prove I was an ungrateful, selfish disappointment. Mom deployed her special weapon, emotional manipulation, disguised as motherly wisdom. She talked about family bonds, about sharing blessings, about how lucky I was to have more than I needed while Diana struggled. She painted my success as somehow accidental, as if I had simply stumbled into prosperity, while Diana faced real challenges through no fault of her own. The pressure intensified weekly after that dinner. Phone calls interrupted my workdays, with Dad demanding updates on when I would do the right thing for Diana. Mom sent lengthy text messages about Diana's declining mental state, complete with photos of her sister's tear, stained face, and dramatic descriptions of her desperation. Diana herself began showing up at my office building, creating scenes in the lobby that embarrassed me in front of clients and colleagues. One particularly manipulative incident occurred during a crucial client presentation. Diana appeared in my office conference room, claiming she had been evicted and had nowhere else to turn. She performed her crying routine in front of my potential clients, forcing me to excuse myself and lose a $50,000 contract while I dealt with her manufactured crisis. Later, I discovered she had never been evicted. She had simply decided to move out of her apartment to pressure me into providing free housing. The harassment escalated to stalking behavior. Diana began following me to work, to business lunches, even to weekend errands. She would approach people I knew, telling them sob stories about her heartless sister who lived in luxury while family suffered. She poisoned my relationships with casual acquaintances, making social interactions uncomfortable as people wondered why I wouldn't help my struggling sister. 2 weeks ago, I finally hired private investigator Catherine Wells to document the harassment and help me understand what I was really dealing with. Catherine came highly recommended by my attorney, with a background in financial crimes investigation and a reputation for thorough, professional work. Her initial findings were disturbing. Diana had been systematically lying to extended family members, telling them I had already agreed to give her the penthouse, and tonight's party was meant to celebrate my generous gift. This revelation transformed everything. Tonight's gathering wasn't just family pressure, it was a carefully orchestrated trap designed to humiliate me into compliance. They had invited 30 relatives and family friends, telling them they would witness my announcement about helping Diana. The public nature was intentional, making refusal socially impossible without appearing cruel and heartless to people whose opinions I valued. As I stood in that dining room, my cheek still stinging from Dad's slap and Diana's expectant palm still extended, I realized this had never been about family support or sisterly love. This was a calculated assault on my independence, orchestrated by people who should have been celebrating my success instead of resenting it. The phone in my hand contained the number that would change everything, but I didn't yet understand how dramatically my decision to press that button would transform all of our lives. Catherine's investigation over the past 2 weeks had uncovered truths far more disturbing than simple family pressure. What I initially thought was standard sibling jealousy and parental favoritism was actually a complex web of financial desperation, addiction, and deliberate deception that went back years. The first shocking discovery was Diana's secret gambling problem. Catherine had obtained security footage from 3 different casinos, showing my sister losing thousands of dollars at blackjack tables during times when she claimed to be job hunting. The footage revealed a pattern of compulsive behavior. Diana would arrive at the casino in the afternoon and play until closing time, often losing her entire paycheck in a single session. Credit card statements Catherine accessed through legal channels painted an even grimmer picture. Diana owed $47,000 across 8 different cards, with minimum payments consuming more than her entire monthly income from temporary jobs. The debt wasn't from necessities, it was from luxury purchases designed to maintain the appearance of success while concealing her financial collapse. Text message records revealed Diana's contact with loan sharks and predatory lenders. These weren't legitimate financial institutions, they were criminals who charged 300% interest and used violence to collect payments. Diana owed these people over $20,000, with payment deadlines that had already passed. The messages contained explicit threats against not just Diana, but our entire family. The investigation into our parents' finances revealed equally disturbing truths. Gerald had secretly remortgaged the family home 3 times over the past 4 years, each time to pay Diana's mounting debts. The house my parents had owned free and clear for decades now carried a mortgage balance of $230,000, with payments that consumed 70% of Dad's pension income. Mom had been systematically selling her possessions to fund Diana's lifestyle. Her grandmother's jewelry collection, worth over $30,000, had disappeared piece by piece to pay for Diana's rent, car payments, and credit card minimums. Martha's explanation to friends about updating her style masked the reality that she was liquidating family heirlooms to enable her daughter's addiction. Catherine discovered that Gerald's retirement accounts had been completely drained. His pension fund, built over 30 years of government service, had been cashed out early to pay Diana's debts, triggering massive tax penalties that created additional financial pressure. At 62, Dad faced the prospect of working until death because his retirement savings no longer existed. The family's desperation explained their sudden intensity about my penthouse. They weren't asking for help, they were drowning and saw my property as their only remaining life preserver. Foreclosure proceedings on their home would begin within 60 days, unless they could produce $70,000 in back payments and penalties. But the most disturbing discovery was evidence of financial fraud. Diana had been forging documents to apply for loans using my penthouse as collateral. Catherine found loan applications at predatory lending companies where Diana claimed to own my property, complete with falsified ownership documents and forged signatures. These applications were federal crimes, and several had been approved, creating legal complications that could affect my actual ownership of the penthouse. Catherine's background made her investigation especially valuable. As a former FBI financial crimes specialist with 10 years of experience in white-collar crime, she understood the legal implications of Diana's activities. Her connections with current federal investigators allowed her to discover that Diana's fraud attempts had triggered automated alerts in the federal financial crime monitoring system. The loan forgeries were part of a larger pattern Catherine had seen before. Diana wasn't operating alone, she was connected to a network of people who used family relationships to pressure relatives into surrendering valuable assets. The network included corrupt financial advisors who identified targets and predatory lenders who processed fraudulent applications. My sister had become part of a criminal enterprise that exploited family bonds for financial gain. Catherine's investigation revealed that Diana had been coached in manipulation tactics by other members of this fraud ring. The crying performances, the guilt trips, the manufactured crises, these weren't spontaneous emotional responses. They were calculated techniques designed to break down resistance and create compliance. Diana had learned from professionals who understood exactly how to exploit family loyalty for criminal purposes. The timing of tonight's party made perfect sense within this context. Diana's latest loan forgery attempt had been submitted 3 days ago, using documents that claimed I had agreed to transfer ownership of the penthouse to her as a family gift. The public nature of tonight's demand was designed to create evidence supporting her false claim that I had willingly agreed to the transfer. As I stood in that dining room with my family and 30 guests staring at me, I understood that this wasn't just about money or family dynamics. This was about organized financial crime, and I had become an unwitting target in a scheme that could destroy my business, my reputation, and my financial future. Diana's extended palm wasn't requesting help, it was demanding surrender to criminals who had already committed federal fraud using my identity. Martha stepped in with her familiar mediating role, but I could see the stress cracks in her usually perfect composure. Perhaps we should discuss this privately, dear. Our guests don't need to witness family disagreements. She gestured toward the living room, clearly hoping to move the confrontation away from the 30 witnesses who were no longer seeing the generous gift ceremony they had been promised. But I remained where I was, phone still in hand. Catherine had taught me that victims of financial abuse often make their biggest mistakes when they allow themselves to be isolated during critical moments. The presence of witnesses actually provided protection, making it harder for my family to escalate their pressure tactics without revealing their true nature to people outside our immediate circle. Uncle Robert stepped forward hesitantly. Velma, honey, we're all confused about what's happening here. Your parents told us this was going to be a celebration of your generosity toward Diana. Are you having second thoughts about helping your sister? His question revealed exactly how thoroughly my family had manipulated the evening. They had created expectations among our extended family and friends, making me appear cruel for failing to live up to promises I had never made. The manipulation was sophisticated and deliberate, designed to use social pressure as a weapon against my resistance. Uncle Robert, I said carefully, I never promised to give Diana my penthouse. This entire evening has been based on a lie that my parents and sister created without my knowledge or consent. My words carried across the silent room, creating visible confusion among the guests who were beginning to understand they had been deceived about the purpose of the gathering. Cousin Jennifer spoke up from near the dessert table. Diana called me last week and said you had already agreed to help her get back on her feet. She seemed so grateful for your support. Are you saying that wasn't true? The hurt in her voice reflected the broader damage Diana's lies had caused throughout our extended family network. Diana's panic increased visibly as family members began questioning the narrative they had been given. I never said Velma had definitely agreed, she protested, her voice taking on the whining tone she used when caught in lies. I said we were discussing it, and I was hopeful she would do the right thing for family. But grandmother Helen, sharp at 83 and experienced with family manipulation from her own difficult marriage, wasn't buying Diana's revision. Diana, dear, you specifically told me Velma had agreed to transfer the penthouse to you as an early inheritance gift. You asked me to come tonight to witness the ceremony. Those weren't the words of someone who was merely hopeful. The web of lies was unraveling in real time, but Gerald attempted to regain control through sheer authority. Regardless of what was said to whom, the fact remains that Diana needs help and Velma has the resources to provide it. This is about family values, not legal technicalities or precise wording. His attempt to reframe the situation revealed his desperation to salvage something from the evening. Martha tried a different approach, appealing directly to my sense of guilt and obligation. Velma, sweetheart, perhaps there's been some miscommunication, but Diana's need is real regardless of what anyone expected tonight. You know she's struggling, and you know we've all made sacrifices to help her. Surely you can find it in your heart to be generous with the blessings you've received. Her words carried the familiar emotional manipulation that had worked on me for years, but Catherine's investigation had changed my understanding of what was really happening. This wasn't about family values or generosity, it was about enabling addiction and funding criminal activity. My generosity would directly support the fraud ring that had already committed federal crimes using my identity. As I waited for Catherine and Agent Rodriguez to arrive, I found myself studying the faces of the 30 people who had come expecting to witness my generous gift to Diana. Some looked confused, others uncomfortable, and a few seemed to be piecing together the reality that they had been manipulated into attending what was essentially a financial assault disguised as a family celebration. The 15 minutes until Catherine's arrival stretched like an hour, but I used the time to observe my family's behavior when their manipulation tactics failed. Gerald's military authority became increasingly desperate and commanding. Martha's sweet manipulation turned sharper and more obviously calculated. Diana's victim performance became more frantic and less believable. Most importantly, I watched as the truth emerged in real time. Extended family members began sharing their own encounters with Diana's requests for temporary help. Uncle Robert mentioned signing a car loan that Diana had defaulted on. Cousin Jennifer admitted to lending Diana $3,000 that was never repaid. Grandmother Helen revealed that Diana had convinced her to take out a reverse mortgage to help with family emergencies. The pattern was clear. Diana had been systematically harvesting money from every family member who trusted her, creating a network of debt and obligation that supported her gambling addiction and criminal activities. Tonight's demand for my penthouse wasn't the beginning of her financial manipulation. It was the culmination of years of fraud that had already damaged multiple family members. As car doors slammed in the driveway outside, I realized Catherine's arrival would bring far more than moral support. The federal fraud investigation Diana had unknowingly triggered would transform this family gathering into a crime scene. And the 30 witnesses who came expecting to see my generosity were about to witness justice instead. The front door opened without a knock, and Catherine Wells entered the dining room like she owned it. Behind her walked a tall woman in a navy business suit carrying a leather portfolio that immediately commanded attention. The room fell completely silent as both women surveyed the scene with the professional assessment of people accustomed to taking control of chaotic situations. Agent Sarah Rodriguez of the Federal Bureau of Investigation introduced herself by displaying her badge to the room, her voice carrying the unmistakable authority of federal law enforcement. Ladies and gentlemen, this gathering is now part of an active federal investigation into financial fraud and identity theft. I need everyone to remain calm and stay where you are while we sort through this situation. The transformation in the room was immediate and dramatic. 30 guests who had come for a family celebration suddenly found themselves potential witnesses in a federal criminal case. The casual atmosphere evaporated as people realized they were no longer at a party, they were at a crime scene. Gerald's military bearing crumbled as the reality of federal investigation hit him. Agent Rodriguez, I think there's been some mistake. This is a private family matter about helping a daughter through difficult times. There's no crime here, just family disagreements about financial support. His voice carried the desperation of a man watching his carefully constructed narrative collapse in real time. Agent Rodriguez opened her portfolio and removed a stack of documents, her movements deliberate and professional. Mr. Gerald Thompson, you are mistaken. Diana Thompson's activities over the past 6 months constitute federal crimes including identity theft, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit financial fraud. Tonight's gathering appears to be part of an ongoing scheme to coerce your daughter Velma into surrendering assets to cover criminal debts. Diana's face drained of all color as Agent Rodriguez addressed her directly. Diana Thompson, you have 5 minutes to cooperate fully with this investigation before we execute the federal arrest warrant that was issued this morning. Your choice is to help us understand the full scope of your activities voluntarily, or face the consequences of forcing us to discover everything through criminal prosecution. The room erupted in shocked murmurs as family members struggled to process what they were hearing. Martha clutched Gerald's arm, her perfect hostess composure shattered by the reality that her daughter faced federal prison. Extended family members began backing away from Diana as if her criminal behavior might be contagious. Catherine stepped forward with her briefcase, methodically removing surveillance photographs and financial documents. Diana, we have casino security footage of you gambling away over $60,000 in the past 4 months while claiming to be job hunting. She spread the photos across the dining table, showing clear images of Diana at blackjack tables during daytime hours when she claimed to be interviewing for positions. We have credit card statements showing luxury purchases totaling $32,000 while you claim to be financially desperate, Catherine continued, adding bank records to the display. Designer clothing, expensive restaurant meals, spa treatments, and jewelry purchases, all made while you told family members you couldn't afford basic necessities. Agent Rodriguez took over the presentation, her voice matter of fact as she described criminal activities. We have documented communications between Diana and known members of a fraud ring that specializes in family manipulation schemes. Text messages discussing tactics for pressuring relatives, strategies for creating false emergencies, and methods for forging documents to steal property. Diana attempted to interrupt, her voice shaking with panic. Those people approached me. I didn't seek them out. They said they could help me solve my financial problems without hurting anyone. I never meant for things to go this far. Her admission of contact with criminals confirmed Agent Rodriguez's case while revealing Diana's deeper involvement than even I had suspected. Furthermore, Agent Rodriguez continued, we have 3 separate loan applications where Diana forged Velma's signature to use the Penthouse as collateral for high-interest loans totaling $115,000. These applications were submitted to predatory lenders who work with the fraud ring to convert stolen assets into cash. The evidence presentation continued as Catherine revealed the scope of Diana's deception throughout our extended family. Uncle Robert's face went white as he learned that the car loan he co-signed for Diana had been part of a larger scheme to establish credit history for bigger frauds. Cousin Jennifer gasped when she discovered that her $3,000 loan to Diana had been used to pay entry fees for high-stakes gambling sessions. Grandmother Helen's reverse mortgage, which Diana had convinced her to take for family emergencies, had actually funded Diana's debts to loan sharks who threatened violence for non-payment. The 83-year-old woman now owed $200,000 against her paid-off home because she trusted her granddaughter's sob story about family financial crisis. Agent Rodriguez explained the broader criminal conspiracy. Diana wasn't working alone. The fraud ring targets successful women with family vulnerabilities, using guilt and manipulation to gain access to their assets. 12 other women across 3 states have lost homes, businesses, and life savings to similar schemes orchestrated by this criminal network. Gerald's attempts to maintain authority became increasingly desperate as he grasped the scope of legal consequences facing his family. Agent Rodriguez, surely we can work something out privately. Diana made mistakes, but she's not a criminal. She's a young woman with problems who got involved with the wrong people. This doesn't need to destroy our entire family. Mr. Thompson, Agent Rodriguez replied firmly, your daughter committed federal crimes that carry sentences of 5 to 10 years in prison. The fraud ring she joined has stolen over $2 million from victims across multiple states. This isn't a family problem that can be solved with apologies and promises to do better. Martha finally found her voice, though it trembled with shock and despair. Agent Rodriguez, Diana has gambling addiction problems. Surely there are treatment programs that would be better than prison. She's sick, not evil. Please, there must be alternatives to destroying her life over money problems. Catherine addressed Martha's plea with professional compassion but firm reality. Mrs. Thompson, Diana's addiction doesn't excuse federal crimes or eliminate legal consequences. However, cooperation with the investigation and full restitution to victims can influence sentencing recommendations. The choice is Diana's. Cooperation with prosecution of the fraud ring will be considered favorably by federal prosecutors. The 30 witnesses watched in stunned silence as their family celebration transformed into a federal crime scene. People who had come expecting to see generosity and family support instead witnessed the exposure of systematic fraud, addiction, and criminal conspiracy that had victimized multiple family members over years. Agent Rodriguez turned back to Diana with the arrest warrant visible in her hand. "Diana Thompson, your 5 minutes of cooperation time is ending. Are you prepared to provide full disclosure about your activities with the fraud ring? Or do we proceed with immediate arrest and let federal prosecutors discover everything through criminal investigation?" Diana looked around the room at the shocked faces of family members who now understood the scope of her deception and criminal behavior. Her victim performance had become impossible to maintain in the face of overwhelming evidence and federal prosecution. The moment of truth had arrived, and 30 witnesses were about to learn whether Diana would choose cooperation or continued denial in the face of federal justice. As Agent Rodriguez waited for Diana's response, I realized this was my moment to transform from victim to prosecutor. Catherine and I had prepared for this possibility, and I stepped forward with my own evidence collection that would complete the case against not just Diana, but the family members who had enabled her criminal activities. "Agent Rodriguez," I said, removing my own phone from my jacket pocket, "I have additional evidence that might be relevant to your investigation. Over the past 3 months, working with Catherine's guidance, I had been systematically documenting every attempt at coercion, manipulation, and harassment my family had directed toward me. I opened my phone's recording app, which contained dozens of saved conversations. I have recordings of phone calls where my parents threatened to disown me if I didn't surrender my penthouse to Diana. Text message conversations where my mother called me heartless and ungrateful for refusing to enable what we now know was criminal activity. Voice messages from my father using emotional manipulation about family sacrifices to pressure me into funding Diana's fraud. Catherine opened her laptop and connected it to Agent Rodriguez's portable printer. We also have documentation showing Gerald and Martha's knowing participation in Diana's schemes. Bank records proving they used retirement savings and home equity to pay Diana's debts while pressuring Velma to provide additional funding. They weren't innocent victims, they were active participants in financial coercion. The evidence display continued as I revealed the systematic nature of my family's harassment campaign. Screenshots of text messages, where Martha shared details about my business contracts with Diana, providing inside information for her manipulation tactics. Photos of Diana stalking me at work, creating scenes designed to embarrass me in front of clients and damage my professional reputation. Agent Rodriguez examined my documentation with professional interest. "Miss Thompson, this evidence suggests your parents may face additional charges beyond enabling Diana's activities. Financial abuse of an adult child, conspiracy to commit fraud, and coercion for criminal purposes are all federal offenses when they cross state lines or involve federal financial institutions." Gerald's face went gray as he realized his authority had not just been challenged but completely obliterated. "Velma, how could you record private family conversations? We're your parents. We raised you, sacrificed for you, gave you everything you needed to succeed. This is how you repay us by destroying your own family." "Gerald," I replied, using his first name deliberately to signal the end of his parental authority over my decisions. "You destroyed this family when you chose to enable criminal activity instead of addressing Diana's addiction. You sacrificed my financial security, my professional reputation, and my emotional well-being to fund gambling debts and fraud schemes. Those aren't the actions of loving parents, they're the tactics of criminals." Martha attempted her familiar emotional manipulation, but her voice lacked its usual confident sweetness. "Velma, sweetheart, surely you understand we were just trying to help Diana through a difficult time. We never intended for things to become so complicated. Can't we work together to find a solution that helps everyone?" Catherine responded to Martha's plea with evidence that eliminated any pretense of innocent motivation. "Mrs. Thompson, we have documentation showing you accessed Velma's financial information without permission, monitored her business activities, and shared confidential details with Diana for manipulation purposes. You also received payments from Diana's criminal associates for providing inside information about your daughter's assets and schedule." The revelation that Martha had been paid by criminals for information about me sent shocked murmurs through the room. Extended family members who had viewed her as a devoted mother began seeing her as an active participant in criminal conspiracy against her own daughter. Agent Rodriguez added Martha's criminal activities to her documentation: financial stalking, privacy violations, conspiracy to commit fraud, and receiving payment for information used in criminal activities are serious federal charges, Mrs. Thompson. Your cooperation with the investigation will be noted, but criminal prosecution appears unavoidable given the evidence. Uncle Robert stepped forward, his voice shaking with anger and disappointment. Martha, you told me Diana was desperately trying to get her life together and needed family support. You made me feel guilty for not doing more to help her. Were you lying to all of us to cover up criminal activity? The questioning from extended family members revealed the scope of lies and manipulation my parents had spread throughout our community. Grandmother Helen demanded explanations about the reverse mortgage Diana had convinced her to take. Cousin Jennifer wanted to know why her loan to Diana had never been repaid. Multiple family members shared stories of financial requests that now appeared to be part of Diana's systematic fraud. Catherine addressed the broader family damage with professional clarity. Diana's criminal activities victimized multiple family members over several years. The fraud ring she joined specifically targets families with existing patterns of financial manipulation, making it easier to exploit trust and guilt for criminal purposes. Your family's willingness to pressure Velma made all of you vulnerable to criminal exploitation. Agent Rodriguez began explaining the legal consequences facing my parents. Gerald and Martha Thompson, you will face federal charges for conspiracy, financial abuse, and enabling criminal activity. Your home will be subject to seizure as an asset purchased with proceeds from criminal activity. Your remaining financial assets will be frozen pending restitution calculations for fraud victims. Diana finally broke down completely, her victim performance replaced by genuine terror as she grasped the scope of criminal consequences facing not just herself but her parents. Agent Rodriguez, please, I'll cooperate fully with whatever you need. I'll testify against the fraud ring, provide all the information I have, do whatever it takes to help. But please don't destroy my parents. They were just trying to help me. They didn't understand what they were enabling. Diana, Agent Rodriguez replied, cooperation will be noted in sentencing recommendations, but federal crimes carry mandatory consequences, regardless of family circumstances or good intentions. Your parents made choices to participate in criminal activities when they chose enabling over intervention. Catherine revealed the final piece of evidence that completed the case against my family's systematic abuse. We also discovered that Gerald and Martha had contacted an attorney about claiming legal guardianship over Velma's finances by fabricating mental health concerns. They planned to have her declared incompetent to manage her assets, giving them legal control over the penthouse and her business assets. The guardianship plan revealed the ultimate scope of my family's criminal conspiracy. They hadn't just planned to pressure me into surrendering my penthouse, they had prepared legal mechanisms to steal complete control of my financial life. The manipulation and guilt trips were just the opening phase of a comprehensive assault on my independence and success. Agent Rodriguez closed her portfolio as she prepared to execute the arrest warrants. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes the evidence presentation phase of this investigation. Diana, Gerald, and Martha Thompson, you are under arrest for federal fraud conspiracy. You have the right to remain silent and the right to legal representation. As federal handcuffs clicked around my family's wrists, I felt a complex mix of relief, sadness, and vindication. Justice was being served, but the cost was the complete destruction of family relationships that had been toxic and criminal, but were still the only family I had ever known. The 30 guests who had come to witness my generous gift to Diana instead witnessed the arrest of 3 family members for federal crimes. Their shocked faces reflected my own emotional complexity. This was justice. But justice that came at the price of everything I had once understood about my family's nature and motivations. The weeks following the arrests revealed layers of criminal behavior and family dysfunction that went back decades. Agent Rodriguez's expanded investigation discovered that the fraud ring Diana had joined specifically targeted families with existing patterns of financial manipulation, and my family's willingness to use money as a control mechanism had made us perfect victims for criminal exploitation. Catherine's deeper investigation into our family history uncovered 20 years of Gerald using financial control to manipulate his daughters. My business success had threatened his authority, explaining his eagerness to support Diana's schemes as a way to reassert dominance over my independence. College tuition had been used as leverage for obedience, car payments tied to family compliance, and even childhood allowances withheld as punishment for autonomous thinking. The investigation revealed that Gerald's military pension and Martha's Social Security benefits had been secretly redirected to pay Diana's mounting debts long before they approached me for help. They had been living off credit cards and home equity loans for over 2 years, creating an unsustainable financial spiral that made my penthouse appear to be their only salvation from complete ruin. Martha's role proved more calculated than anyone had realized. Her monitoring of my financial activities went beyond casual parental interest. She had been systematically gathering intelligence about my business contracts, client relationships, and asset growth to provide Diana with strategic information for manipulation campaigns. Her motherly concern masked sophisticated financial stalking that violated multiple federal privacy laws. The federal prosecutor assigned to the case, District Attorney Rebecca Morrison, explained the charges each family member faced during their arraignment hearing. Diana received federal charges for identity theft, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit financial crimes carrying potential sentences of 8 to 12 years in federal prison. Her cooperation with the investigation into the broader fraud ring could reduce her sentence to 4 to 6 years with mandatory addiction treatment and financial counseling. Gerald faced charges for conspiracy, financial abuse of an adult child, and money laundering related to his use of retirement funds to pay criminal debts. The military pension he had counted on for retirement security was subject to garnishment for restitution payments to fraud victims. At 62, he faced the probability of working until death to pay legal consequences for enabling his daughter's criminal behavior. Martha's charges included privacy violations, financial stalking, conspiracy to commit fraud, and receiving payment for information used in criminal activities. Her participation in the guardianship scheme added additional charges of conspiracy to commit identity theft and attempted financial kidnapping of an adult child. The family home in Meadowbrook, which had been remortgaged 3 times to pay Diana's debts, entered foreclosure proceedings within 30 days of the arrests. Federal asset seizure laws allowed the government to claim property purchased with proceeds from criminal activity, leaving my parents homeless and financially destroyed. Gerald's business relationships dissolved overnight as news of the federal charges spread through his professional network. Military contractors who had valued his security clearance and reputation distanced themselves from association with federal fraud cases. His consulting income disappeared completely, eliminating any possibility of financial recovery before retirement age. Martha faced social ostracism from her community circles as details of her role in the criminal conspiracy became public knowledge. The women's club she had belonged to for 15 years asked for her resignation. Neighbors who had respected her as a devoted mother learned she had been paid by criminals to spy on her own daughter's financial activities. Diana's addiction treatment began in federal custody, but her criminal behavior had destroyed relationships throughout our extended family. Uncle Robert pursued legal action to recover damages from the fraudulent car loan he had co-signed. Cousin Jennifer filed civil claims for her unpaid loans. Grandmother Helen faced the prospect of losing her home due to the reverse mortgage Diana had convinced her to take. The fraud ring investigation expanded to include 12 other families across 3 states who had been victimized by similar schemes. Diana's cooperation revealed the network's recruitment methods, target selection criteria, and manipulation tactics that had stolen over $2 million from successful women whose family relationships made them vulnerable to guilt-based coercion. With federal protection in place through restraining orders and asset seizure, I was finally free from family harassment for the first time in my adult life. Catherine helped me implement comprehensive security measures for my business and personal accounts, ensuring that no family member could ever again access my financial information or use my assets for criminal purposes. My business actually grew stronger during the crisis, as the stress of family conflict had motivated me to develop expertise in protecting assets from family manipulation. I began offering consulting services to other entrepreneurs facing similar challenges, helping them recognize and defend against financially abusive family relationships. The penthouse that had been the center of my family's criminal conspiracy became a symbol of independence and success, protected by law rather than threatened by manipulation. I changed all the locks, implemented security systems, and created a safe space where I could heal from years of systematic emotional and financial abuse disguised as family love. Catherine's investigation skills proved invaluable beyond the criminal case, as we developed ongoing security protocols to protect my business from future threats. Her law enforcement background made her uniquely qualified to help entrepreneurs understand when family pressure crosses legal boundaries and becomes criminal behavior requiring intervention. 6 months after the arrests, Diana was sentenced to 4 years in federal prison with mandatory addiction treatment and financial counseling upon release. The judge noted her cooperation with the broader fraud investigation while emphasizing that family relationships don't excuse federal crimes or eliminate consequences for criminal behavior. Gerald received 3 years in federal prison for conspiracy and financial abuse, with his pension garnished for restitution payments until his death. The judge expressed particular disappointment that a military veteran had chosen criminal behavior over seeking legitimate help for his family's addiction problems. Martha was sentenced to 18 months in federal prison for her role in the conspiracy, followed by 3 years of supervised probation with restrictions on accessing other people's financial information. Her Social Security benefits were garnished to pay restitution to the 12 families victimized by the fraud ring she had helped operate. The legal consequences extended beyond criminal sentences to complete financial destruction for my parents and extended supervision for Diana. But the most significant change was the establishment of legal boundaries that protected not just my assets, but my right to success without family interference or criminal exploitation. As I stood in my penthouse 6 months after that terrible family party, looking out at the harbor lights that had originally motivated me to work so hard for success, I realized that justice had been served not just through criminal prosecution, but through the restoration of my right to earn, keep, and enjoy the fruits of my legitimate labor without fear of family manipulation or criminal conspiracy. 18 months after federal agents arrested my family, at what was supposed to be a celebration of my generosity, I hosted a holiday gathering at my penthouse for people who had earned the right to be called family through their actions rather than their genetics. The space that had once been a symbol of conflict had become a celebration of independence, authentic relationships, and the kind of success that no one could steal or manipulate away from me. Diana completed her federal prison sentence after serving 4 years, emerging with court-mandated addiction treatment and financial counseling that had genuinely changed her perspective on money, family, and personal responsibility. Her release came with strict conditions: no contact with me without court supervision, no access to family financial information, and mandatory participation in gambling addiction support groups for the rest of her life. The woman who returned from federal prison bore little resemblance to the manipulative, entitled person who had demanded my penthouse keys that night. Prison had stripped away her ability to blame others for her problems, and addiction treatment had forced her to confront the destructive patterns that had nearly destroyed multiple families. She worked 2 part-time jobs, lived in a supervised halfway house, and was slowly rebuilding relationships with family members she had victimized through her criminal behavior. Gerald's 3 years in federal prison had aged him dramatically, but also humbled his authoritarian personality in ways that decades of civilian life had never accomplished. His military pension, garnished for restitution payments, provided barely enough for basic survival in a small apartment near the prison, where he would remain under supervised probation for another 2 years. The man who had once commanded respect through authority now faced the reality of living paycheck to paycheck while paying for the consequences of enabling criminal behavior. Martha's 18 months of incarceration had been followed by 3 years of supervised probation that restricted her access to other people's financial information and required her to attend counseling for enabling behavior patterns. Her Social Security benefits, reduced by restitution garnishment, forced her to share a small apartment with Gerald as they both struggled to rebuild lives destroyed by their choices to support Diana's criminal activities rather than addressing her addictions honestly. The family home in Meadowbrook had been sold to pay restitution to the 12 families victimized by the fraud ring Diana had joined. Uncle Robert recovered partial compensation for the fraudulent car loan he had co-signed, though the full amount would take years to repay through garnished wages and asset seizures from my parents' limited resources. Grandmother Helen's situation proved more complicated but ultimately successful. The reverse mortgage Diana had convinced her to take had put her paid-off home at risk, but victim compensation funds from the federal case allowed her to keep her house while receiving monthly payments that actually improved her retirement security. At 85, she had become one of my closest allies, sharing stories of her own struggles with controlling family members throughout her marriage. Cousin Jennifer not only recovered her unpaid loans through victim compensation but also used her experience with Diana's manipulation to help other family members recognize and resist financial abuse tactics. She had become a volunteer counselor with a nonprofit organization that assisted families dealing with gambling addiction and the criminal behavior it often generated. My business had grown by 60% as I developed a specialty in helping entrepreneurs protect their assets from family manipulation and financial abuse. The stress of my own family crisis had taught me to recognize the warning signs that other successful women often missed until criminal behavior destroyed their financial security and professional reputations. Catherine Wells had become not just my private investigator but a business partner as we developed comprehensive asset protection services for entrepreneurs facing family financial pressure. Her law enforcement background, combined with my business experience, created a unique consulting practice that helped clients distinguish between legitimate family support requests and criminal manipulation schemes. The romantic relationship I had developed with Marcus Chen, a fellow entrepreneur who respected my independence and success, had grown into a partnership built on mutual support rather than traditional family expectations or financial dependence. Marcus understood that my success belonged to me, and his own business achievements meant our relationship was based on choice rather than need or obligation. The penthouse that had been the center of my family's criminal conspiracy had become a sanctuary where I could heal from years of systematic emotional and financial abuse disguised as family love. The marble countertops where Diana had expected me to hand over my keys now held legal documents protecting my assets and business from future threats. The balcony where I sipped morning coffee offered views of a city where I had built success through legitimate work rather than criminal manipulation. The holiday gathering I hosted included Uncle Robert and his wife Sarah, cousin Jennifer and her new husband David, grandmother Helen with her caregiver Patricia, Catherine and her partner Lisa, Marcus and his sister Amanda, and several close friends from my business network who had provided emotional support during the federal investigation and criminal trial. As we shared dinner around the table where my family had once demanded I surrender my independence, I reflected on the journey from manipulation victim to empowered survivor. The people gathered in my home had earned their places through loyalty, honesty, and support during difficult times rather than through genetic relationships or guilt-based obligations. The evening's conversation included updates on Diana's progress in addiction recovery, Gerald's efforts to rebuild his reputation through volunteer work with veterans organizations, and Martha's participation in family therapy, designed to help her understand how enabling behavior had contributed to near destruction of multiple lives. Their consequences were severe but fair, and their efforts at genuine change offered hope for eventual healing without compromising the boundaries that protected me from future manipulation. Catherine raised a toast to the conclusion of the federal investigation that had resulted in convictions for 8 members of the fraud ring that had exploited family relationships to steal over $2 million from successful women across 3 states. My family's case had provided crucial evidence that dismantled a criminal network and prevented future victimization of other families vulnerable to guilt-based financial manipulation. Marcus offered appreciation for the strength I had shown in choosing legal protection over family loyalty when criminal behavior threatened my independence and success. His support had been crucial during the months when I wondered if protecting myself was selfish or if family relationships should take priority over personal financial security and professional reputation. Grandmother Helen shared wisdom from her 85 years about the difference between family love that supports growth and family control that prevents success. Her encouragement had helped me understand that true family loyalty meant protecting each other from destructive behavior patterns rather than enabling them for the sake of superficial harmony. As the evening concluded and my chosen family departed to their own homes and families, I stood on my balcony looking out at harbor lights that represented the city where I had built success through honest work, protected it through legal means, and shared it with people who respected my achievements rather than resenting them. The life lesson learned through 18 months of family crisis, federal investigation, and criminal prosecution was profound but simple. True family loyalty means supporting each other's growth and independence, not enabling destructive behavior or demanding sacrifice of personal success. Setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's essential for protecting yourself and preventing others from continuing harmful patterns that ultimately destroy everyone involved. Justice had been served through legal channels. Family patterns had been broken through consequences and treatment, and I had emerged stronger, wiser, and truly free. The penthouse that had once been threatened by manipulation was now secure through law. The business that had been damaged by family harassment was now thriving through expanded expertise, and the future that had been endangered by criminal conspiracy was now bright with authentic relationships and protected success. Standing there in my home, surrounded by evidence of success earned through legitimate effort and protected through legal means, I felt gratitude for the strength to choose justice over manipulation, independence over control, and authentic relationships over genetic obligations that had become criminal conspiracies. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and protecting yourself from financial manipulation? How did you navigate the difficult balance between supporting loved ones and maintaining healthy boundaries around your success and independence? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with your own experiences with family financial pressure, please like this video and share it with others who might need to hear about the importance of protecting themselves from manipulation disguised as love. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories about overcoming family challenges and building authentic relationships based on respect rather than guilt or obligation. Thank you for listening to my journey from victim to survivor, and I hope it inspires you to protect your own success and independence while building relationships worthy of your trust and generosity. Wishing you the courage to set boundaries, the wisdom to recognize manipulation, and the strength to choose authentic love over toxic loyalty in all your family relationships.